Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have a great episode today, but first I want to say hi to Jamie. What's happening
Hi.
on your side of the world? Not that far
Nothing
away.
much. Happy to be here. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Okay, well, we just going ahead and jumping right in. We know that recovering from ultra processed food isn't just about what's on your plate. It's about what's happening inside your mind too. And today we're looking into a topic that affects so many of us, and that is anxiety. Interestingly, anxiety is something that can sneak up on us. I know it does for me. I don't know about you. And food has been our go-to coping mechanism so often. But what if we could find peace without reaching for that bag of chips or pint of ice cream? That's what we're going to explore today.
We're going to share some strategies for managing anxiety, talk about why food has become a comfort for many of us, and give us all tools for real lasting peace. So let's start with the big question. Why do we turn to food when we're anxious?
Yeah.
That's again, for me, that goes back to, I think that I was using it all those years for anxiety. Somebody talked about they're equalizing the pressure, their internal pressure with their external pressure. I thought that was a really
Ooh.
interesting perspective to share on that. Um, that she felt so much pressure outside of her that she would eat, and in her case, it was binging, and she would eat so much so that she could literally push out against the pressure she felt pushing in. I thought that was interesting. Now she unfortunately was a purger as well. So she had this valve that she said that she would release it with. And then for me, I think that I would use it as sort of calming down that vagus nerve massage, if you will, because the esophagus literally runs down
Yeah.
next to the vagus nerve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that um, for me, sadly, I think that it's just readily available all the time. So it's an easy fix for me. It's an easy reach, literally, whether it's at the office, at home, at school, and it's used in air quotes at every turn. And now we have been conditioned to think of food for reasons
Mhm.
other than nutrition. And I love that quote that I heard this a long time ago, and it's always stuck with me that when we eat for reasons other than nutrition, we're giving food a bigger job than it was ever designed to do. And then we're depending on it to do all these miraculous things, and it's just not possible. So not only do we use it to celebrate and mark occasions, but we also use it when we are sad or lonely or just plain had a bad day. And oh my gosh, what about boredom? I mean, that's one of my biggest triggers ever. And that can skyrocket my anxiety. So since I know that in advance, I work very, very hard on being conscientious of what my day is going to look like and where any problem spots might be because I have to work at keeping my emotions in check. So before I go to bed at night, I will do a quick overall overview of my calendar and see if there's any down spots. And if so, I put in there what is something I could accomplish during that. I mean, it might even be 15 minutes, which may seem extreme to some people, but I know myself and my recovery. And if I have 15 minutes of boredom, I'm telling you, my brain will go straight to the thing in my husband's cupboard that I could, use to comfort myself during that time if I think it's going to be a downtime. So anyway, I just work hard at managing my schedule because I know that is a huge trigger for me. So here's the problem. Food gives us that immediate dopamine hit. It's an escape from the discomfort of anxiety. But as I was talking about, the problem is the relief is temporary, and then we feel so much worse afterwards. So that's what we're trying to live in that future self when we're in the recovery mindset.
Yeah, this pattern is deeply ingrained for many of us recovering from the effects of ultra processed foods. And these foods are designed to be hyperpalatable, so they
Mhm.
can be perceived as an emotional crutch because they do alter our state so quickly. But again, when we think about this pattern, if we're using food for emotional, I mean, there's nothing seeking emotional comfort from things outside of us is a fool's errand. Whether it's food,
Well
alcohol,
said.
sex, drugs, rock and roll, any of it. It doesn't matter. It's all outside of us, and it's not going to provide true comfort. So as you know, Paige, I have a lot of background in the world of 12 step, and I certainly have, leaps forward in my recovery using those tools. And sometimes I'll take a step back and rest on my laurels, as they say, and get pulled back into some of my old behaviors around emotional sobriety and using my emotional tools, or I'll have a major life shift like I had in the last year with this, getting sick and having to sort of rethink everything in my life. But this is an opportunity, this ease and comfort that so many people are using things outside of themselves, including food, to calm themselves. That is exactly what I've been working since, 2019 formally in a 12-step recovery. And before that, many years just on other things that will calm my brain, things that will keep me centered and process the emotions without using food.
Yeah.
So things outside of us that we know don't work, right? Where do we go? Well, we can look at getting outside and moving. We can look at picking up the phone and calling a friend, getting out of ourselves and serving someone. We can look at just taking a nap, taking a rest. Like those
Mhm.
things are just, calming that constant state of nervousness. That self-soothing is a critical tool to learn.
Yeah, I agree. And so what comes to mind for me is what's the first step in breaking that cycle of emotional eating? And again, this is the big ahas when it comes to recovery. And that's what we really want to know. So if we're not turning to food, what do we do instead? So let's talk about healthier ways to manage anxiety. Jamie mentioned a few of them, but let's talk a little further about that. For
Mhm.
me, my first step is to pause. And I like to say I like to say pause because it sounds better and healthier than freezing, which is really probably what is happening on the inside. It's that sympathetic nervous system kicking in, and I've done that since I was a kid. I just freeze when big things, big emotions happen. And I find so much power and safety in that pause. It gives me a chance to think and start slowing things down to a snail's pace so I can process what's happening. And I'm sure it's just a safety mechanism. I'm sure other people do that for safety. Well, it's a way of the brain protecting itself. And that's when I try to start looking at things from every angle and asking myself questions about the situation. Okay, first of all, am I okay? Is it really that bad? Can this be fixed? Am I calm? Do I just need some time? And those questions to myself are actually very calming. And even telling myself I am calm helps me tremendously as well. Just repeating that back to myself. I saw a show recently on one of those streaming stations, and this lawyer, he just had lost a case or something didn't go right, and they were in the parking lot leaving the courthouse and started having this major panic attack and kind of dropped to his knees. And the lady lawyer with him, he said to her, "Tell me I'm okay. Tell me I'm okay." And she's like, "What?" He goes, "Just start talking to me and tell me I'm okay." And I could feel myself, my anxiety rising just watching him, because I was already upset about the case too, that he had lost this big thing. And so she said, "Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. You're okay. It's going to be fine. Don't worry. It's all going to work out." And ironically, I had to laugh out loud. I was giggling to myself in my living room because I actually felt myself calming down too. But that mindset, that messaging is so strong that when you tell yourself that you're going to be okay, I think it works like a charm. So pausing and just the self-talk, I think, is a place to start. What are your thoughts when you start feeling anxiety? What's the first thing that you do? Do you have a go-to?
Yeah, deep breathing, prayer, just leave the room, get a break, um, pick up one of the dogs, take them for a walk. I mean, lots of things. I've gotten better and better at getting out of self, and looking, reaching out and the last thing I do is pick up my phone and go on social media, because that to me is not,
That doesn't calm you down?
not at all. So, and anyway, so I will pick up my phone and reach out to someone and let them know I'm thinking of them, or I check in with someone that I wanted to say hello to. But I typically do not try to sit there and figure it out in the moment. I literally just change my location if I can. And if not, then I do some deep breathing, or like I said, try to get myself. I also have these, things on my desk that I'll sit and play with, with my hands, something just to get that energy out of me until I can get out of that Zoom meeting, or out of that conversation, or whatever's making me anxious.
I love,
Um,
hold your thingy bob up again for people that are watching. What is that?
yeah, it's like a
It's a
like a
squeezy.
thinking putty. So it literally, you get to, kind of mess with it, and it's very
Oh,
good for those of us that have to sit multiple hours a day, many days on meetings.
that- that's
So
brilliant. Brilliant,
yeah, it
because you
allows
are
me.
doing something.
Yes, yes. Or, again, when I'm standing at my desk, many meetings a day, I'll be standing at my desk. When I record, I don't, because I move too much. But when I'm on meetings and nobody really is caring about how much I move, I will walk in place under my desk that most people can't see. So again, just things to kind of move and dissipate the energy. And I also, will look at making sure that I take things out of my diet that are, I know, even a lot of fruits, high sugar fruits will, create anxiety. So I'll have to, watch caffeine, of course, for me creates anxiety. So I take those things out when I know I'm struggling. Certain times of year, right? Yeah, external forces can create anxiety, especially around the holidays. There's so many things to force into that time that can create anxiety. So being mindful about what's around me, what I can control, and what I can't. Um, and sometimes I will just block time on my calendar and take it for myself and for some downtime.
Mhm. Um, so
You want to
I,
talk about movement and exercise?
yeah, yeah, for me, one of the things that helps my anxiety, I think it's kind of to the top of the list, so much so that it gives me anxiety when I don't get to it, is movement and exercise. Even a short walk can help regulate emotions. And I wish I had some scientifically proven theorem for describing what happens to me after exercise, but I'm so much calmer and I seem to have things worked out. There's something that happens in the brain when I'm exercising this. It's just there in the background, kind of churning around, and I'm so much calmer. And I just have a more solid grip on things after I work out. It may be something that's been bothering me for a long time, but afterwards, it almost puts me in a position that I feel like I'm better equipped to manage life. And I really
Mhm.
don't have the explanation to say why that is. I just know that it is. We know that endorphins kick in, but it almost feels bigger than endorphins for me. It just has been a game changer in my life when it comes to
Mhm.
calming myself down, soothing myself in a good way.
Yeah. I have the same experience with exercise. For me, journaling and writing is the next one, getting thoughts out of our heads and onto paper. That works every time. It just every time. I don't know what the deal is. I'm sure that there's some scientist out there can explain the release of different hormones that are released when you write what you're thinking. But every time that I do it, it really is like magic. I feel way better.
It's interesting because I journal once a week in our family journal. I'm not a big journal. I'm not great at that, but I never plan ahead what I'm going to write about that week for about our family. But by the end of that page, I'm like, oh, I didn't even know that was something significant I was going to pull out. So yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, it
Another,
really does uncover things.
do you, are you like, do you regularly journal? Is that part of your,
It's part
are
of,
you
yeah, weekly,
daily?
no, not daily yet, but I there was a time in early in my recovery where I did daily, and it really helped. I'm at the point where I probably 2, 3 days a week I'll journal, and it really
Hmm.
does help. Yeah.
And when you sit down to journal, do you have something in mind that you're writing about, or you just wait till you start writing and let the
Uh,
pen?
no, a lot of times it'll be just be free flow. Sometimes I'll have writing prompts if I'm working on something for my one of my recovery programs, or
Mm,
if I'm working on something for a coachee or someone that I'm working with, I will do some
mhm.
writing that's planned. But other than that, no, it's just really free flow.
Yeah, I was just curious because that I'm not strong in that area, so I was just curious what you did. But
Mhm.
anyway, so another area that is helpful is just connection, community and connection. Reaching out to a friend can be more fulfilling than food when we are feeling anxious because it addresses that underlying emotional need of connection, reassurance, and comfort, whereas processed food only provides this temporary distraction by numbing, which I always laugh about that because we all know it's temporary, but yet we go back and repeat those patterns over and over again. And I don't know why I do that. Why do I do that when I already know how the play is going to end? But I still am
Human
need to.
nature, human
Yeah.
nature.
Well, and if we talk about blood flow to the frontal lobe, when you're in that moment, you don't have access to all those logical thoughts that we do when things are calm. So
Exactly.
the thing about when you talk to a friend is that those core human needs of feeling seen, heard, and understood, that helps ease up anxiety so much. And most importantly, a conversation with a friend can lead to laughter and a sense of belonging. Those are things that provide real emotional nourishment in life that we all thrive the best. Those really are part of those human needs of connection, connecting like that. And I know this skill is powerful, but I think still pausing is my number one. And Jamie, I'm curious to know if you have a number one, something that maybe works better than others. I know we talked about what you do first, but that doesn't always mean that's the best method for you in
Mhm.
the end. And so I really want to know is that bigger question of, so once we figured this out, how do you remind yourself in that moment to use these tools instead of food? And I think that's the question for everybody, right?
Mhm. For me, it's prayer. It's, my program of recovery in the 12-step world that I do, which is not a food program. It's a relationship and spiritual connection program.
Oh, and
Those programs, they tell me to pause and pray when agitated. So I do. And then I reach out to if I have sponsors in those programs. I can go in and read daily readers and literature. It really has been a game changer. Where I don't get me wrong, I still feel anxiety, I still have anxious thoughts and moments, but I don't let it myself get um totally hijacked by them anymore. And I don't
Mhm.
miss life or um, you know, put too much on my plate, so to speak, in activities, so that I'm sort of missing out on doing that deep work and spending time with God, or spending time with other people in recovery. And it's just been drilled into me. I, whenever I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm starting to examine all of that overwhelm and pick it up and kind of um, wallow in it, which can happen. I'm just reminded, like, it's too much. It's too much self. Get out of self and go help someone. So that really does, for me, it resonates. I pick up the phone, I text, I call, I reach out, I post something in my group meetings online. So again, it's just it's a habit, like, that needs to replace the habits that we've had that don't serve us.
And I love what you said about it doesn't mean the anxiety goes completely away. You just
Right.
have a manageable grip on it. I'm glad you,
That's right.
because we don't want people to think, okay, so your anxiety is going to completely disappear altogether. We're not telling
No,
people that
I
Sorry,
think about no, think about, you're right. Think about when, like, we were volunteering in our church, and my husband and I, and we're volunteering. He's in the two and 3-year-old room. I'm in the 1-year-old room, in the infant room. And, they ask you when they interview you, they're like, well, what do you do with a child who's upset, or a child who's fighting over a toy? I think we talked about this, but, yeah, do you reprimand or do you redirect? And I'm like, not my kid. So no on the reprimand, yes on the redirect. And it's the same thing for my inner child, right? If my inner child is freaking out about something, or my inner teen, usually I redirect it. And then I reward it when I see good behavior. It's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing as a real life child. So I remind myself that if there's a part of me that is anxious, it is a part of me. It is not the true me. The true self in me is not anxious. It's very calm and collected and compassionate and curious, and right. So I stop letting that part of me run that show, and I go to my true adult healed self, which is sometimes takes longer to find, but she's in there. And I just kind of use I work through that to get curious and understand what's really going on with that anxious part, and what really is the issue, and what I can really truly do about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think about the tools, right, in the middle of heightened emotions, that is the number one for me, is when I'm really heightened, it's because some immature part of me has hijacked me, and I need to get curious and figure out what's going on with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, did you want to add something there before I talk about metacognition?
No, well, yes, because you said that so well that I was just thinking I've got this trip coming up 2 weeks in the summer going to Scotland and Ireland, and
Mhm.
I'm going alone. I mean, it's in a group, but I'm going by myself. I don't know anybody on the trip, and I I've already thought about it, and I'm worried about my anxiety because I'm going to be out of my routine. I'm not going to I can't control my food for 2 whole weeks. I can't take 2 weeks of food on the plane. So I'm anxious about my bathroom because I want to drink all my water, but I'm anxious about getting to the bathroom. And I love exactly what you said about I'm going to need to really turn into that mature part of me to take care of the scared little kid about what am I going to do if I have to go potty, or what if I get hungry, or things like that. So although I'm really looking forward to it, there is some anxiety starting to bubble up for me because I want to do it successfully and I don't want to be anxious. And what am I going to do if this tour is taking too long and I'm bored? And, all those things can really set me ablaze with my anxiety. So that was very calming what you said. I really liked that of just talking to that reaching into that mature part to help that anxious little kid in
Yeah,
there
it's a
that
game
feels
changer.
trapped.
It's a game changer. And that's why metacognition is a skill that's helpful there, because it helps us
Yes.
remember in the moment too, that we could use this tool. It's metacognition is really examining our thoughts. That's really what metacognition is. It is the cognition of the cognition. It is the square, cognition squared, right? It's really looking deeper into what you're thinking and questioning, and not just believing each thought, but truly questioning each thought and wondering, is this true? Like, the work of Byron Katie, that
Mm-hmm.
that bookended, foundational question, is this true?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time when you ask yourself that, if you're in anxiety, the answer will be no. Um, so, and then asking myself, if it's something that I'm upset about, can I control it? And the answer 99% of the time is no. It's another person or another thing or a situation outside of me. No, I can't control them or it. So then what can I control? Well, I can control my perception of this. I can control how I use my tools. I can control how I work my recovery program. I can control how I analyze my emotions, or work the 12 steps on my emotions. I can figure out what prayer will work for me, or ask God for help. There's so many things that I can do to divert my attention, to redirect my attention away from the anxious thoughts, and looking at more of the calming, um centering thoughts.
Yep.
So again, it's that so many of us, and myself included, for years just believed everything we thought, and we thought that
Right.
whatever we were thinking was true. And that's just the, because it must be, right?
Yeah.
Of course it is, but it's not. Our thoughts are not always true. Our thoughts are not always, certainly not always helpful. And they're not
Mhm.
always our thoughts. They could be thoughts that were put into our minds from other people. They could be things that we observed in the world or in media that we didn't even know we internalized. Old tapes playing from childhood that are not, that are false beliefs. There's so many things. So it is helpful to examine the thoughts. I would add, don't spend too long. Really, like, don't spend too long on that. Get
Mhm.
get out of your head and go help someone.
Yeah. That makes me think of when I first heard that saying that feelings aren't facts, they're just feelings.
Sure.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, good one. That was a real game changer for me. So it opened my eyes to thinking, looking at things a little differently and thinking a little
Exactly.
differently. I really like this metacognition. And
Mhm.
I laughed when you said cognition squared.
I love that's true. I'm not a
Did you just make
mathematician.
that up? Have you heard that before? Or did you just make that
No, but
up?
I think whenever I think of meta, I think it's something compounded on itself. So that's why I
Yeah.
said cognition squared. I don't know if that's accurate, but
Well, I do like that, and I have been practicing that a lot, and it really works like a charm for me. And it's not even that hard. And just a
no.
one little tiny bit of effort really can change an entire mindset, and it's immediate. It's immediate. And to add to that conversation, we have worked with people who feel like food is the only thing that can comfort them, and they can't see that it will ever change, which is a huge red flag of being deep in the addiction, right? Because that is what someone deep in the addiction would naturally think. So I want to talk about that for a minute. And I'm going to share what I would say to someone who says, I'm never going to recover from that. And then I'm going to let Jamie answer as to what she would say to help someone in that situation. What I would say to someone is, first, I would acknowledge how real and overwhelming those feelings can be, because they are, especially in the beginning, especially when you're wanting to get started, especially when it seems so tough and cravings can be a real pill. So,
Mhm.
but it's not just about the food, it's about what that food has represented to people for years, forever. Ultra processed foods have likely been a source of comfort, a way to self-soothe, and maybe even a coping mechanism that's been with people all their life. So the fear of not having that warm fuzzy blanket, when kids have those little fuzzies that they love and they can't go to sleep without them, it's terrifying, right? That does make total sense, and that can even cause some anxiety. But here's what I would want people to know: you're not broken,
Right.
and you have the capacity to build new ways to cope, ones that don't leave you feeling worse afterwards. We've said that like 3 times in this podcast already today. We're trying to focus on the afterwards part, not the immediate right now.
Right.
So it may feel impossible, but recovery isn't about forcing yourself to quit something overnight. It's about adding in small supportive habits that gradually make old patterns less necessary. Instead of focusing on what you're trying to remove, let's focus on what you can add, things that genuinely help your body and mind feel safe. That could
Mhm.
be nourishment that stabilizes your mood, movement that helps release some anxious energy, or even a grounding practice that soothes your nervous system in that moment. And over
Mhm.
time, as these new tools become familiar, you'll start to see that your ability to cope has always been inside you. And I love this next point, that ultra processed food has just been a shortcut in your brain that your brain has learned to
Mhm.
use. But it's not the only way, and you are stronger than you think. And this journey is about discovering that strength one small step at a time, which is why we have all these branches, right? You don't have to start with the food. What's killing you most? Where do you need to start? And what's doable that we can start making small changes and build up some confidence and feel good on the inside, increase that internal morale that I can do
Mhm.
hard things. So what do you want to add to that? What else would you say to someone who thinks I will never, this is too hard, I can't recover?
Oh, I would just, well, the first thing I would say, I don't think that the ultra processed foods has been a shortcut. I think it's been a short circuit. Really. I think
Oh, much
it is
better.
a very, very, um, ill-equipped way to adapt to anxiety. It really is. It perpetuates it.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
all
totally.
create an addictive response in the brain. It's not a shortcut. A shortcut out of anxiety would be the deep breathing, would be, getting out of self and serving someone, changing your location, getting outside, doing something soothing for yourself. That would be a great shortcut. So I just, again, for me, and people can use all kinds of things, processed foods or alcohol or I spend a lot of time with recovering alcoholics, and they will talk all the time about just that first sip of alcohol will comfort them, and over time, as it progressed, it turned into that first drink would comfort them. um, and they could not cope with life without it. So that's not a shortcut. That's truly a short circuit. And there's
Yeah.
nothing good that comes from those kinds of deviations from what our bodies truly need. So for me, I would think that yes, we're stronger than we think, and really there's nothing good that comes from using food or substances or alcohol to squelch that anxiety. All it does is reinforce an addictive response, addictive behaviors. So if we think about what someone who's maybe coming to us saying, hey, I don't think I'll ever truly be able to break from using food. Um, I would tell them flat out that using food is, what you're doing is you're creating an addictive cycle. So how can you take that addictive cycle and turn it into truly a healthy cycle? And
Yeah.
what would that look like? And that would look like a lot different use of your, again, some of the other coping mechanisms, healthier coping mechanisms that we've talked about. I don't want to repeat them. We've talked about them a lot, but we also know that coping with anxiety is again, might be one thing in the moment, but it might be bigger to think how we can focus away from the anxiety and focus on what we want to do to create and keep peace in our daily lives. So that would look like other routines we have so that we can stay calm and connected with ourselves or with others or with our spiritual practices that can keep peace in our lives instead of trying to whack-a-mole with anxiety. So that would probably, I know is a lot more helpful, right? Taking our focus off the things we don't want and
Right.
putting it on the things that we do want, which is peace and comfort um and balance, right? Is a big word for me. The other thing that, many years ago, I would feel very restless if I had free time. I would feel very restless. And for me, back then, it wasn't about not wanting to use food, although that happened, but it was really just about, I didn't like feeling restless. Um, and and now the older I am, and maybe, getting sick has given me a lot of perspective on the importance of rest and the importance of balance and the importance of just taking a break from the hectic pace and not overscheduling myself. Um, and not filling every single second of my time with something to do. And for me, higher value things that are better than food, will fill my downtime.
Mhm.
Reading, prayer, journaling, working on my recovery program, doing work for RFR. These are all different ways to use my time in that don't have anything to do with food or things outside of me, like substances or anything else that I might have used in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
So I hope that's helpful when we think about cultivating peace.
Yeah, and I love that topic because it's acknowledging that this is not just about managing anxiety when it comes up. It's about creating this lifestyle that supports peace, which
Beautiful.
again goes back to our branches, all of our branches, and those big foam neon fingers in basketball games is pointing back to peace. Everything that we do points back to peace in the brain. And for
Mhm.
me, I have a grounding routine that is foundational to my day. I start with the spiritual practice of reading scriptures and saying my prayers and listening to spiritual and uplifting talks while I'm getting ready for the day. So I feel like I'm fully immersing myself and grounding myself right into a peaceful foundation to start my day, that I catapult off of that. And
I
that
love that.
invites so much calm, hope, faith, and trust. And it really helps set me up for whatever is to come. Because once you're out of the sanctuary of your bathroom for the morning, you never know what's going to come at you. And it may look different to other people, like focusing on a meditation practice, but connecting with your inner self and higher power is what helps me the most. And starting my day that way from the minute
Yes.
my eyes open, it's a non-negotiable for me. And I make sure I go to bed on time to make sure I'm up early enough so that I can get all that done without a frenetic pace. This is a huge priority for me. I really count backwards to where do I have to be at what time in the morning. Okay, minus how much time I need to get that spiritual practice in, because otherwise I'm a mess. I need that. I literally need that in my life. So what about you? You want to add anything?
No, I covered everything. And I think that when we think about ways to cultivate peace, I love that you talked about your daily routine. It's important. And then again, looking at the nutrition, like what food, I had to look at what foods were increasing my anxiety and what foods were helping me minimize it. And that really did help a lot, to be honest, about what I was eating and was it contributing or helping to alleviate my anxiety.
Right.
And when I thought about, again, the social media, right? We talked about social media being, that page you talk about, a digital detox, for sure. Social media, the minute that I feel any kind of anxiety or negative emotion on a social media, I just shut it down. I shut it off.
Mhm.
Um, it's just not something worth it. I've noticed that I've gotten pulled into, some of the political stuff lately, on social media, and I I find myself losing time with it now. I'm like, oh, okay, I've spent more than a couple of minutes here. I gotta go. And I'm very, very honest with myself about it. Sleep is another way to make sure that you can keep your anxiety levels down.
Yeah.
And then of course, practicing self-compassion is a big one we've talked about, that examining your thoughts with compassion.
Yeah. And I know for me, you talked about nutrition a little bit. My nutrition makes a huge influence on my mental health.
Yes.
Undeniably. If I feel gross from overdoing it or having a sidestep, my emotional stability is completely thrown off. So I protect that part of my life with great vigor, because again, I don't want to pay the price afterwards for what I already know is coming. So, do you want to say anything about your nutrition, the connection for you? You kind of
Yeah,
already have nutrition and
I
mental health.
have, the one thing I'll add here is the older I get, the way that my body is, and I've never been diagnosed as, since I found recovery many years ago, I've never been diagnosed as anywhere close to a diabetic. Everything is normal. I've never been even, they never even talk about that. But I can see that my body's ability to use, especially, complex carbohydrates even.
Yeah.
But the simple we know is not something my body can use. And if I choose to use those foods, I pay the consequences. And sometimes I do use them and I understand the consequences attached. Um, but even the complex carbohydrates for me now, my body just does not use them the way that it
Mm,
did before. So for me,
interesting.
I've noticed that if I really, I need to be very mindful of the kind of food. The foods don't give me anxiety. I suppose if I ate, you know, junk food again, it would probably give me anxiety because those
Mhm.
chemicals in those foods we know are connected to causing anxiety in the brain and body. but even complex and starches, single food starches, I don't know that they would give me anxiety, but I would have anxiety from the fact that my body isn't able to process them the way that it needs to anymore.
And
It's
we've
just
had this And we've had this conversation about as we age, things may change.
that's
What
right.
we might have been able to tolerate earlier,
That's
we
right.
may not be able to tolerate as people that are either heading into menopause or past menopause, things like that. The body will change, girls, for those of you
Right.
listen who aren't in
That's right.
that state. Hang on to your bootstraps.
Ha! Yeah, that's a fact.
So as we wrap up, we want to leave you with this. You don't have to stay stuck in the cycle of anxiety and emotional eating. There are other ways to find peace, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Even small changes like taking a few deep breaths, like Jamie had talked about before making a food choice, can make a huge difference. And I did want to leave you with a quote too before we get into listener questions. Anxiety's like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but you don't get very far. I
Mhm.
thought that was cute. Okay, you want
Yeah,
to take
I
some
agree.
listener questions?
Yeah, the first one, I struggle with unstable blood sugar levels, which seem to contribute to feelings of anxiety. How can someone recovering from ultra processed food use and abuse stabilize them? Again, I would look at, so for me, this is something as I aged, and I would look at your age, I would look at your activity level, but more specifically your age, and knowing that things can change significantly as you age, especially through the perimenopausal and menopausal years. With that shift, right? Um, you might not process foods the same way as you used to. So it might be that if you have unstable blood sugar levels, it could be related to the food you're choosing, and it could be related to the activity you're engaging in every day, and you're not matching your food intake with your activity needs. So
Mm-hmm.
again, we know that certain activity needs change our food needs, right? And I know for me that's true. Whenever I lift or work out intensely, I am much hungrier. I
Mm-hmm.
just am. And other times I notice that if I haven't worked out that day, or if I've just like had a gentle walk that day, my appetite doesn't change, my blood sugar levels don't change. But I would look at what you're eating. Even single ingredient whole foods can contribute to those blood sugar swings, and you might be at a part of your monthly cycle if you're a woman, or you might be at part of your life where a phase of your life where the food does not react the same way in your body as it used to.
Mm-hmm. Agree. The next one is someone wrote, how does practicing self-compassion make a difference in overcoming both anxiety and food-related struggles? First of all, we know compassion is so necessary when you're trying to recover. We have got to drown out shame with compassion. So compassion kind of is the kryptonite to shame. It invites peace into our life. And I love the saying that no one has ever hated themselves into recovery. It's probably one of the most essential components when you start this journey. Do you think that too? Compassion is like the most essential thing when you get started on this. So that's what I
100%,
would say.
100%. Um, I remember years ago there was a mentor of mine in my coaching life, where I was learning how to be a executive coach, and I had a mentor who taught me a lot. And she told me one day, she said, I when I hear the way I speak to myself inside, she said, I am appalled. She said, I am a bully and a jerk to myself. She said, I would never speak to another person the way I speak to myself.
Hmm.
Never. And I
Hmm.
thought that was very helpful to remember, right? That compassion. Here was someone that's, she's very evolved. She was very self-aware. She was very smart and well educated around her craft, helped a lot of people change their lives. And she was, stuck in this lack of compassion. And she had nothing but compassion for people when she worked with them. Right. So it was just so interesting. Um, I try to create a peaceful routine, but life keeps getting in the way. How do I stay consistent? I hear you. That's something I've struggled with, and could easily struggle with again. Um, guard your peace, guard your time, guard your peace, right? Prioritize peace above other things. There are 1,000 probably a million things that would try to steal our peace, and people, situations, uh, phone, social media, all of it will try to steal peace. And we have to be really mindful of protecting that time and that keeping that balance.
Yeah, I agree. The next one is, how do I deal with social anxiety around food choices, especially when friends and family don't understand my recovery journey? So we know you've got to do a lot of work up front before these events, if you can, especially if you know what's coming, then you can visualize the event, how you will handle it, and stick to the plan that you create for yourself. Just having a plan, that in and of itself will dramatically decrease the anxiety, as well as having an exit plan. Leave early if necessary. Go to the bathroom to text a friend if you're struggling, and let them know how you're doing. But mostly make a hard decision, a hard and fast decision ahead of time, and have a plan as well for when you get home, because that is another big sticky situation. Once you get home, you can feel relaxed and like, oh, I got through this hard thing and now it's time to celebrate. Wahoo. So planning, making a firm decision in your mind, and having a plan of how the whole thing's going to go up to and including after you get home.
Very, very important. I couldn't agree more. Last question we'll take. What are some practical ways to slow down? And I like this idea of slow down and be more present and instead of letting anxiety drive my decisions. And I also see that there's a question about setting boundaries with people or
Yeah.
situations. That really is the same question.
Yeah.
So
Go for it.
so not the same question, but it's similar enough that it can be addressed in the same way. So when we think about the term boundaries, it's really all about setting boundaries on our time, on our thoughts, on our peace, on our priorities. It's boundaries are things that we, they end with us, right? So it's where we end and others begin, what we're willing to do and what we're not. So when we think about anxiety taking over, and how we need to sort of slow down, the first step would be setting a boundary. It would be looking at the things that are pulling at us, right? Commitments we've made, commitments we've not made, but responsibilities, right? Those would be examples of responsibilities, like work life, or children, of course, family. Those are responsibilities. So the responsibilities and commitments, one of them we have control over, one of them we really don't always have control over. And also we need to look at how we prioritize our time with ourselves throughout that morning or first thing in the morning before life comes at you. So like really how you're using your time so that you can be very mindful when others are pulling at it.
Yeah.
And that would be for me, guarding my peace and prioritizing my peace first thing in the morning allows me to set myself up for a good day when it comes to all the other things that try to give me anxiety or exist and can cause me anxiety.
Great way to end it. I love that. Thanks. This has been a great conversation. Hopefully it's helped a lot of people that struggle in this area. And if you want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U. And we hope to see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.